The death of contingency recruitment. How to remain relevant to your clients in the age of AI. This audiobook is written by Plamen Ivanoff, Executive Chairman and co-founder of iIntro, and narrated by James O'Brien, Managing Director of iIntro and host of the Retained Recruiter Show. Before you listen to this,
I just want you to be aware that this is not a comfortable read, or in the case of the audiobook, listen. It isn't designed to validate what you already believe, and it isn't designed to reinforce the way you currently operate. It is designed to challenge it. The recruitment industry has operated in a certain way for decades. For many, that way of working has been accepted without question. Until now. The environment has changed. The expectations of clients have changed. The tools available to both recruiters and employers have changed. And yet, much of the industry has not. This creates a gap between what clients need and what most recruiters still provide. This book explores that gap. More importantly, it explores what happens next. You may not agree with every point made. That isn't the objective. The objective is to make you think differently about the role you play and the role you could play.
we said this before.
It was almost a decade ago that we made a prediction. At the time, it was uncomfortable for many in the industry to hear. Some dismissed it outright. Others acknowledged it quietly, but carried on regardless. A small number took it seriously and began to adapt. The prediction was simple. Contingency recruitment, as a model, was fundamentally flawed. Not inefficient. Not in need of improvement. Flawed. It was built on competition rather than control. On speed rather than accuracy. On activity rather than outcome. And like all flawed systems, it was only a matter of time before something better replaced it. Back then, the something better was still emerging. Technology was advancing, but not yet dominant. Clients were frustrated, but still reliant on recruiters. The cracks were visible, but the structure was still standing. Today, those cracks have widened, and in many cases, the structure has already collapsed. Contingency recruitment wasn't inefficient, it was flawed.
Recruitment as it was.
To understand where we are now, we need to be honest about where we came from. For decades, recruitment operated on a relatively simple premise. A client had a vacancy, a recruiter went to market. Candidates were identified, approached, and presented. If one of those candidates was hired, the recruiter was paid. This model became known as contingency recruitment. It was widely adopted because it appeared to remove risk for the client. No hire, no fee. On the surface, it seemed efficient, competitive, flexible. But beneath that surface, the incentives told a very different story. Multiple recruiters were working the same role. Access to the client was limited. Information was incomplete, and there was constant pressure to deliver quickly. In that environment, the objective subtly shifts. Not find the best person, but find a placeable person before someone else does. That distinction matters more than most are willing to admit, because it is the root of the problem.
The illusion of success.
For many recruitment businesses, success has historically been measured in simple terms. Placements made, fees generated, revenue growth. On paper, it can look impressive, but step back for a moment and consider a different perspective. If a recruiter places 3 candidates with a client in a year, most would consider that a success. But what if 2 of those hires leave within 3 months, and the third leaves before completing their first year? From the client's perspective, that is not success. It is disruption. It is cost. It is lost time, lost productivity, and lost confidence. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is a common one. Measuring success purely in placements is one of the greatest delusions in the recruitment industry. The reality is far less comfortable. Research consistently shows that 46% of hires fail within 18 months, that only 19% are considered high performers, and that between 20 and 30% fail within their first year. These are not marginal errors. They represent a systemic issue in how hiring decisions are made and supported. And when those hires fail, the client doesn't blame the process, they blame the recruiter. Placements are easy to measure. Outcomes are not.
Technology didn't create this problem.
There is a growing narrative that artificial intelligence is disrupting recruitment, that AI is the threat, that technology is the reason recruiters are under pressure. This is only partially true. Technology did not create the problem. It revealed it. For years, recruiters justified their value through access to candidates, access to networks, access to information. But access is no longer scarce. Platforms such as LinkedIn, Indeed, and a growing number of AI-driven tools now provide employers with direct visibility of the talent market. They can source, filter, and engage candidates faster than ever before, at a fraction of the cost. It has been noted elsewhere that technology can already replicate up to 90% of the transactional recruiter service. That figure alone should prompt serious reflection. If 90% of what you do can be automated, what is the remaining 10%? And more importantly, is that 10% enough to justify your existence? Technology didn't disrupt recruitment, it exposed it.
The changing client.
While recruiters have largely continued operating as they always have, clients have been quietly evolving. Faced with inconsistent results and rising costs, many employers have taken matters into their own hands. They've invested in internal recruitment teams. They've adopted new technologies. They've explored RPO and MSP solutions, not because they wanted to replace recruiters, because they were forced by a lack of consistency, forced by a lack of accountability, forced by a lack of measurable outcomes. The uncomfortable truth is this: clients didn't wake up one day and decide to move away from recruiters. They were pushed in that direction by their experiences.
A dividing line.
What we are now seeing isn't the gradual evolution of recruitment, it's a separation. On one side, the traditional model persists, transactional, reactive, volume-driven. On the other, a different model is emerging, smaller in number, but growing in influence. These recruiters are not competing on speed or price. They aren't chasing every vacancy. They aren't relying on CV supply as their core offering. Instead, they are redefining their role entirely. They are becoming advisors, consultants, and in some cases, embedded partners within their clients' businesses. They are less concerned with filling roles and more concerned with improving hiring outcomes. This is not a subtle shift. It is a fundamental one.
Recruitment as it will be.
If we project this forward, the direction becomes clear. Recruitment will not disappear, but it will change. The transactional elements of recruitment, sourcing, screening, matching, will continue to be absorbed by technology. This is inevitable. What remains will be the elements that technology cannot replicate effectively: judgment, context, understanding, decision-making. The recruiters who survive and succeed will be those who operate in that space, not as intermediaries, but as contributors to the hiring decision itself. The market is already moving towards more comprehensive end-to-end solutions, including MSP and RPO models, where ownership of outcomes replaces simple candidate supply. This is where the industry is heading. The only question is whether individual recruiters choose to move with it.
The decision.
At this point, the discussion stops being theoretical. It becomes personal, because every recruiter, every business owner is now faced with a decision, not a tactical one, a strategic one. Do you continue operating within a model that is increasingly under pressure, or do you begin the process of evolving into something different, something more aligned with where the market is going? This isn't an easy transition. It requires a shift in thinking, a shift in positioning, a shift in how value is defined and delivered. But it is possible, and more importantly, it is already being done. The objective was never to find the best person. It was to find a placeable one.
The emergence of a different recruiter.
The recruiters who are adapting aren't doing more of the same. They are not simply working harder. They are not increasing activity levels. They are not sending more CVs. They are doing something fundamentally different. They are stepping away from the idea that their role is to fill jobs. Instead, they are positioning themselves as contributors to a far more important objective: improving the quality of hiring decisions. This may sound like a subtle shift. It isn't, because the moment you move from filling roles to improving decisions, everything changes. The questions you ask change. The conversations you have change. The expectations placed upon you change. And most importantly, the way clients perceive your value changes.
What clients actually want.
It is worth pausing here because this is where many recruiters misunderstand the market. Clients don't wake up in the morning thinking, we need more CVs. They think, we need to make the right hire. The distinction is critical because CVs are not outcomes. They are inputs, and in many cases, poor ones. A CV tells you what someone has done. It tells you very little about how they think, how they behave, or how they will perform in a specific environment. Yet for decades, recruitment has been built around the assumption that a well-written CV combined with an interview is sufficient to make a high-quality hiring decision. The data tells us otherwise, which is why more clients are beginning to ask different questions. Not, can you send me candidates, but how do we ensure we hire the right person? This is the space where the consultative recruiter operates.
From recruiter to consultant.
The term consultant is used frequently in recruitment. In many cases, it's used loosely, but in this context, it has a very specific meaning. A consultant isn't someone who executes tasks. A consultant is someone who improves outcomes. That distinction is important because it implies responsibility. Responsibility for understanding the client's business, understanding the role beyond the job description, and understanding the factors that drive success and failure. It also implies a different level of involvement. The consultative recruiter isn't brought in at the end of the process. They are involved at the beginning. They help define what good looks like. They challenge assumptions. They guide the hiring process. In some cases, they reshape it entirely. A new category is emerging: recruitment management consultants, who focus on managing the hiring process rather than simply supplying candidates. And this is where the value begins to shift. The shift isn't from contingent to retained. It is from supplier to consultant.
The role of assessment.
If there is one area where the traditional model has consistently fallen short, it is in assessment. Identifying candidates is relatively straightforward. Assessing them accurately is not. This is where the gap between transactional and consultative recruitment becomes most apparent. Transactional recruitment relies heavily on CVs, interviews, and gut instinct. Consultative recruitment introduces structured assessment, behavioral evaluation, and data-driven insights. The objective is not to remove human judgment. It is to support it, to make it more consistent, more objective, more reliable. Because the cost of getting it wrong is significant, not just financially, but operationally and culturally. This is why the most effective recruitment models are increasingly combining technology with human expertise, not replacing one with the other.
The commercial shift.
One of the most common objections to moving away from contingency recruitment is commercial. How do we replace the volume? How do we justify higher fees? These are valid questions, but they are often based on the wrong assumption, the assumption that more activity equals more revenue. In reality, the opposite is often true. Transactional recruitment is inherently inefficient. Multiple roles, multiple clients, low fill rates, high competition. A significant proportion of effort does not result in revenue. Consultative recruitment operates differently. Fewer clients, deeper relationships, higher conversion rates, more control. As a result, revenue becomes more predictable, more stable, and in many cases, significantly higher. This isn't because fees are arbitrarily increased, it's because the value delivered is fundamentally different.
Beyond single placements.
Another key shift is the move away from single, isolated placements. In the transactional model, each role is treated as a separate transaction. In the consultative model, the focus expands from how do we fill this role to how do we support this organization's hiring over time? This opens the door to a different type of engagement: multi-role projects, managed service programs, and embedded recruitment partnerships. These models are not new, but they are becoming more relevant because they align more closely with what clients actually need: consistency, continuity, and control. They also allow the recruiter to operate at a different level, not as an external supplier, but as part of the client's strategic function.
A subtle but important proof.
It's important to recognize that this shift isn't theoretical. There are recruitment businesses that have already made this transition, businesses that were once fully contingent, operating in the same way as many others. They have restructured their approach, introduced more robust processes, integrated assessment tools, and shifted their positioning. The result? Higher fees, better client relationships, improved retention of placed candidates, in some cases, significantly improved. Not because they became better at finding candidates, but because they became better at helping clients make decisions.
What does a bad hire really cost?
Most employers feel the impact of a bad hire. Very few ever quantify it. The direct costs are straightforward: the salary paid, the recruitment fee, and often a rehire fee, the onboarding and training, and the time invested by management. The indirect costs are harder to see, but just as real: lost productivity, team disruption, a decline in morale, missed commercial opportunities, and the impact on clients or revenue. Most clients have never seen this number clearly. but they feel it every time it happens. When you quantify the cost of getting it wrong, the value of getting it right changes completely. Most businesses underestimate this by 2 to 3 times.
A case study.
One recruitment firm we worked with faced a familiar challenge: strong activity levels, a consistent pipeline, but unpredictable results. Roles were being filled, but not always successfully. Clients were satisfied until they weren't. Repeat business existed, but it wasn't guaranteed. Unlike many firms operating in a contingent model, a significant amount of effort produced no commercial return. The issue was not capability, it was structure. The business was operating within a model that prioritized speed over accuracy and activity over outcome. The shift that followed wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. Instead of focusing on filling more roles, the business focused on improving hiring outcomes. They redefined how they engaged with clients. They spent more time understanding the role, the environment, and the expectations for success. They introduced more structure into how candidates were assessed and presented, and they positioned themselves not as a supplier, but as a partner in the decision-making process. The result? Fewer clients, stronger relationships, higher fees, and most importantly, hires that stayed. Not every client made the transition, but the right ones did. And those relationships became the foundation for sustainable growth.
The role of AI moving forward.
AI will continue to evolve. Its capabilities will expand. It will become more integrated into every stage of the recruitment process. This is not something to resist. It is something to understand. Because AI will not replace the consultative recruiter. It will amplify them by removing administrative burden, by improving data visibility, and by enhancing decision-making tools. But it will also accelerate the decline of those who rely solely on transactional activities, because those activities are the easiest to automate. The direction of travel is clear. If 90% of what you do can be automated, what is left?
The final decision.
We arrive once again at a decision point, not a theoretical one, a practical one. Do you continue to operate within a model that is becoming increasingly commoditized, or do you begin the process of evolving into something more aligned with where the market is going? This is not about abandoning everything you currently do. It's about building something alongside it, a more structured approach, a more consultative offering, a more valuable service, one that is harder to replace and easier to justify. The question is not whether the industry will change. It already has.
A final thought.
The recruitment industry is not disappearing. It's maturing. The expectations placed upon it are increasing. The tolerance for inconsistency is decreasing, and the tools available to both recruiters and clients are improving. This creates both pressure and opportunity. Pressure for those who remain unchanged. Opportunity for those who adapt.
Why I intro?
If this resonates, for some it will confirm what they already know. For others, it will challenge how they currently operate. Either way, the direction of travel is clear. The recruitment industry is changing. The expectations of clients are changing, and the role of the recruiter is changing with it. The question is not whether this shift is happening. It is whether you choose to be part of it. There is a pathway to making this transition, a structured approach that allows you to move from transactional to consultative, improve the quality and retention of your hires, build stronger, longer-term client relationships, and create a more predictable and scalable business. This is not about replacing what you do, it's about evolving it. If you are ready to explore what that could look like for your business, visit www.i-intro.com and book a discovery call with us.
Closing question.
The future of recruitment is not uncertain. It is already visible. It is being shaped by technology, by data, and by changing client expectations. But most of all, it's being shaped by the decisions that recruiters make today. The question is not whether the industry will change. It already has. The question is whether you will change with it.
About the author. Plamen Ivanoff is the chairman and co-founder of iIntro and executive chairman of Grass Greener Global, an international executive search and recruitment business. Over the past 2 decades, he has worked closely with recruitment firms across the UK, Europe, and North America, helping them rethink how they deliver value to clients in an increasingly competitive and technology-driven market. His work focuses on one central idea: that recruitment, when structured correctly, can move beyond candidate supply and become a critical part of how organizations make better hiring decisions. Through iIntro, Plamen has supported recruitment business owners in transitioning from traditional contingency models to more consultative, outcome-focused approaches, including retained and managed service engagements. This shift has enabled those businesses to improve the quality and retention of their hires, build stronger, longer-term client relationships, and increase commercial predictability and control. His thinking challenges long-held assumptions within the industry, particularly the belief that speed and volume define success. Instead, his work advocates for a more structured, data-informed and accountable approach to recruitment, one that aligns more closely with the expectations of modern employers. This audiobook is part of that ongoing challenge. Visit www.i-intro.com for further information, including other ebooks authored by Plamen Ivanoff. This audiobook and its associated ebook are published by iIntro. Copyright 2026 by Insight Out Solutions, Limited. All rights reserved. No part of this book or audiobook or its associated materials may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, recording, or by any other information store or retrieval system without express written permission from the publisher. iIntro is a trading name of Insight Out Solutions Limited, a company registered in England and Wales. Registered number 9276074. Registered office, Department 4 The Boulevard, Clarence Dock, Leeds, LS 101PZ, England.